All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I do not know what's happened here. I am blaming you, Tony, but I am still happy to be here. I really don't. Tony, why did we start so late today? It's later than we should have. We had a good meeting. We had our meeting and our initial meeting right on time. Everything was very punctual. Yeah. And now we're running late. And I don't.
I blame you.
It is my fault. It is my fault on some level usually. So
I blame you.
Anyway, Kim is here and
Kim, how are you?
Tony is here.
Thanks, Tony.
And we are here. We're on remote. This is the last day we're on remote, and then back to the studio for the balance of the pre-election ramp-up. Neil Boudreau is our first super sticker. Come on. First of all, I love his last name. Boudreau sounds very Boudreauish. You know what I mean? It sounds very high-end. Yeah. Sounds French or, it sounds like he's too good for our conversation. But Neil Boudreau is first in with the super sticker, so I wish we had some award for him. We do have a thank you. Yes. And this loud open says we are on. Tony doesn't like how loud the open is when we're on remote. He feels that
it was better this time.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was much better this time.
Where are your credibility glasses? It's being asked. You're right. Thank you. My God, I forgot. I'm now completely connected to Catherine Beer, who leaves us a super sticker as well today. And a huge shout out and thank you.
Thank you so much.
And a shout out.
Big shout out.
That's the last name. Yeah.
Beer is a great name. We've had Boudreau and Beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like a little Boudreau and beer every day. Really great. Thank you, guys. We're a crowd-funded show, so it sadly takes a little money to keep things going, and you guys are terrific to help us with this effort. Kelly Malloy with a $20 super sticker. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much and thank you so much.
Thank you so
much. And then thank you.
I feel like you're acting very unprofessional right now.
I have to get the acknowledgments in. I'm very sorry, but that is the big shout out to Kelly and to the Boudreau beer combination that we were very excited to have on board. There is a lot going on, and it was quite an eventful weekend. And we have a lot from the weekend that we'll share with you. I do want to mention you've got Gary Dietrich, bottom of the hour. He is a political pundit for years across the CBS television stations, across iHeart Media. And we're so lucky that he was part of our life at KGO. And when I invited him over to join us here on the YouTube platform, he has come. So you'll love, he's sort of I would call him a political agnostic from the standpoint of which way he leans in terms of his commentary. Okay, so I like his takes for that. And then we will, in the second hour, to kick off the second hour, Richard Greene, the Civics Dean. He is a Democratic strategist, so you're definitely going to get leaning there. But he breaks things down so beautifully, and he can comment and just reiterate something that we've talked about here before, which is the Electoral College. We talk about the Electoral College from time to time, and I always get this, the Electoral College, just deal with it, libs, you're always complaining. But the reality is that the Electoral College is a ridiculous way to pick such an important position, a chief executive that's chosen in this perverted way that essentially perverts the people's voice. I think that's indisputable. Take away all the kind of electioneering and everything else that goes on with voter disenfranchisement. I mean, these are all things that contribute to the madness that is American politics. But the true madness is in the DNA of American politics when it comes to choosing a president. And that DNA is the Electoral College. And so when I divert and rail about it, and I hear your frustration, and we talk about it, the system that is gamed to, as I say, not really reflect the people's voice, there is enough of a drumbeat about how messed up it is for it to be changed. And Richard Greene will touch on that today because that effort is already underway. I mean, it hasn't just started. It's been a while now, and there is some momentum behind it in the states. There are actual state compacts that are speaking to this. So again, if you don't know anything about it, stay tuned for the second hour. We'll take you through it. It's not complicated, but it is important information. It will regrettably not help in this election. This is a straight-up electoral college election, which means it's Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If Kamala Harris can win those states, we're off to the races, and it's a Harris presidency. If not, if Trump steals Pennsylvania, it looks as though I'll just say it's going to be a lot tougher for Kamala Harris. Mark is in Las Vegas. Woot, woot. I see, Karen. It's true. I am in Las Vegas. Sadly, I don't have great bounty, great experience to tell you about, but it has been fun, and so I have enjoyed it. Thank you. We went to the Fontainebleau. Actually, we walked through it last night. So my full Vegas breakdown, I'd be happy to provide for you if there is sufficient demand. But we really did enjoy ourselves and have enjoyed ourselves. So this has been cool to be able to join you remotely. And anyway, we have a lot to get to today. So without any further delay, let's do it. I think there's going to Thompson show. Yeah, we have pundits. We have clips. We have that Madison Square Garden madness that went down. Absolutely insane. This was an effort on the part of MAGA folk to get together and celebrate and also to message on some level. So the celebration part, I think, went pretty well. The messaging, you'll tell me. Tony, go ahead and roll that Today Show package, if you would. And this just gives you an overview of Trump and Trumpiness this weekend.
Donald Trump kicking off the campaign's final week with a massive rally overnight at New York's Madison Square Garden. The former president introduced by his wife Melania, lashing out at his political rival Kamala Harris with personal attacks.
Everyone knows she is a very low IQ individual.
Mr. Trump repeating his recent attacks on Democrats.
They are indeed the enemy from within.
But the rally took a dark and divisive tone long before Trump himself took the stage. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe,
by the way,
opening
stop right
speaker,
there, Tony.
cracking a racist joke about...
Where in American history, in your lifetime, can you remember a major American political candidate saying she's a low IQ individual, they're the enemy from within? These are default refrains on the part of the Trump people now. It's crazy. Those kinds of personal, it's not even a personal attack. It transcends that, right? It's these kind of rhetorical fireballs that are basically insult slurring. It's absolute madness. And somehow this is what passes and is accepted as a political rally. Now, there's even sort of a call and response on a lot of the stuff that he does. All right, sorry, back to the action. So this all started, they were saying, even before he took the stage. The night was already getting pretty hot with weird, insulting, coarse, and politically sensitive rhetoric. Go ahead.
About Latinos. So vulgar, it's mostly unairable.
These Latinos, they love making babies, too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no... They don't do that. They... Just like they did to our country.
Then pivoting to Puerto Rico.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
That joke not just offensive, but potentially politically unwise, too, with large populations of Puerto Rican voters spread out across the swing states, including more than 400,000 in Pennsylvania alone. The Trump campaign responding to the comedian's set, which included other racist attacks, saying this joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. Other speakers continued the attacks. Radio host Sid Rosenberg on Hillary Clinton.
What a sick son of a...
Many targeting Harris.
Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country.
Trump friend David Rem calling her the devil.
She is the Antichrist.
Tucker Carlson also attacking the vice president, who is Indian American and black.
The first Samoan Malaysian low IQ former California prosecutor ever to be elected president.
As the speakers rallied the crowd.
It needs to be a landslide. We need to slaughter this other people.
And Trump delivered his closing message.
Everyone will prosper, every family will thrive, and every day will be filled with opportunity and hope. And very much so, it will be filled with the American dream. We're bringing back the American dream.
It's that joke about Puerto Rico that continues to draw attention and condemnation overnight, including from celebrities with ties to the island. Bad Bunny, Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, all posting about Puerto Rico and about Vice President Harris's plan for the island, which by coincidence was released yesterday while she was in Pennsylvania. A very different message for their millions of followers than what folks heard at that rally. Savannah?
All right, Garrett Hake leading us off. Thank you.
Well, this, as I say, is just another animal. I don't know really even how to process it except through the prism of modern-day America, and obviously now in the political discourse, a lot of this stuff is far more acceptable. Let me just say one thing, though, about Tony Hinchcliffe. Tony Hinchcliffe is an insult comic. He is a politically incorrect and coarse sort of generator of material, meaning that which you'll get from him is that stuff. He doesn't do stuff that is going to be politically safe. He's not.
That's fine, but it just wasn't funny.
Right.
Like you could even hear he would throw out one of these jokes, and there would be nothing but groans, or you could just hear the crowd noise, but no applause, no laughter. It felt flat even there. It was bad.
I blame Tony, says Trevor Starr in Hollywood. It's certainly he seemed to be the low water mark. There was other stuff there, and it was a really, well-attended rally. Tucker Carlson disturbs me immensely because I think he is the sort of rising political figure like J.D. Vance who could actually be relevant in the future of American politics. He speaks well. He, had a huge audience. He had a huge audience in the various forums that he's been platformed on. And so I worry about him. And he's a despicable guy with despicable, hateful core essence to him. If you go to his video, Tony, let's watch a little bit of him. And then I want to get to a little Hulk Hogan, a little Dr. Phil. That's kind of what went down. But I do have on this weird day where we're in the shadow of what I think was a rally that sort of, well, you heard it. This vituperative rhetoric that's just disgusting and toxic. But it works. I fear, a little bit for what will actually happen on Election Day. That said, I do have an extremely optimistic bit of news when it comes to Kamala Harris. That I will give you in just a couple of minutes. First, I wanted to see this bit from, this is this, what's his name? Tucker. Do you see it in the rundown? Tucker, she has it in there. Tucker at MSG.
He was very angry yesterday, Tucker.
He just seemed to really crank up the grievance machine.
He was almost so, I don't know, high energy that he was jittery.
Yeah, I think he was high.
With anger.
I absolutely do. I think
it really looked like it.
It felt like a cocaine-induced, run. Go ahead, Tony. Run a little bit of it.
She was so shaky.
Yeah.
That takes, the bravery that takes is incredible. Donald Trump's going to win. He's going to win. I know that that's true. Why is Donald Trump going to win? The people he's about to defeat have no idea. And they're panicked. They have no idea why people like Donald Trump. And their first theory was, well, Donald Trump is evil, so half the country's evil also. And that's one of the reasons they spent the last 4 years trying to destroy the country, because they're mad at its voters for liking Donald Trump. How much easier would it have been just to pause for 20 minutes and ask yourself honestly in some silent place, why do people like Donald Trump? And if they had been honest enough to ask themselves that question, they would have come up with the two main reasons, and here's what they are. The first reason that people like Donald Trump is because he likes them. That's why.
Okay, you can stop
And it's
right there
real.
because, of course, that's not true. Donald Trump does not like you, okay? Donald Trump doesn't care about you. Donald Trump doesn't even care about those who pledge ultimate fealty to him. See any number of people who worked with him in his last administration. The idea that he likes you, first of all, they don't like you and he likes you. Really? He likes you enough to peddle a bunch of BS your way, and then he'll throw you away like yesterday's news. I mean, that's what he did when he was president, right? He peddled a bunch of BS about COVID to you. It's going to go away right away. I've got my best people on it. Nothing to worry about. And that costs hundreds of thousands of lives, if not more. Now, the other thing that was going on, I'll give you a little more MSG because Trump went to Joe Rogan also, and there's some of that. And I also want to play you a bit of Michelle Obama. So I'll have all your, I'll be playing the hits, I promise here. The next bit is, did you like the Hulk? Let's play the Hulk Hogan, a little bit of the performance. I think Hulk Hogan struggled to get his shirt torn. Did you see that?
Yeah, he was having a little trouble.
Yeah, he was having a little trouble. So,
People don't leave my rallies.
let's take a look. Let's take a look. For Hulk Hogan, it's performance. You get it, right? This is all performance. Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you something, Trumpomaniacs.
Just
Welcome to the house that Hulkamania built. You know something? Usually when I'm in Madison Square Garden, I'm body slamming giants. I'm winning world heavyweight titles, and I'm cracking people over the heads with steel chairs. And the energy in Madison Square Garden is off the Richter scale. But today, Trumpomaniacs, the energy in here is something like I've never felt. The energy of all these Trumpomaniacs is the most powerful force in the universe. And today, this is Donald Trump's house, brother. You know something, Trump maniacs?
I thought he was going to get to
no stinking
Trump maniacs. I mean, just the way he's talking to you can tell it's performative. This is all theater. So it's a perfect rally for a guy like Hulk Hogan. I mean, these are not serious people, to use the phrase again. These are not serious people on the part of the GOP. They are bumper sticker generating, billboard generating, hate generating hurlers of this sort of toxic environment. Now, having said that, let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with the fun here. Like, you have to, I always say, well, what if Hulk Hogan was wearing a blue shirt and he was going over and he was doing a Kamala rally and it was just fun? I mean, wouldn't you probably give him a pass like you would say, well, that was kind of fun, you know? It's the theater of the moment that I don't have a problem with, but it's the theater of the complete animal that we saw at Madison Square Garden that I do have a problem with. It's what's included here. It's the harmless stuff along with the real messaging, the otherness messaging, right? The enemy from within. I mean, the obviously the racist stuff, the anti-Latino stuff, the bigoted stuff. It's just so awful. I just can't believe it's being said out loud at Madison Square Garden. Now, there were apparently people leaving. Is this right, Kim? I saw the video.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. You're saying people left early?
Yeah, they have video. They were watching the doors, and as you can hear Trump speaking in the background, there's many people just filing out. Now, granted, this was a really long event, so there were a lot of different speakers. It lasted hours and hours. So maybe by the time you get to the main event, which is supposed to be Trump speaking, people are ready to go. I don't know.
Or maybe it was just people going to the bathroom. Do you think, Kim? Could it be?
No.
Is there a way we could know that?
No, they were leaving the venue. Yeah.
Oh, they were okay.
People don't leave my rallies.
So I want to. What do you think, Tony? What?
The rumor is that that's when they opened concessions finally, because they had the concessions closed the entire time until Trump came on.
Kim,
Supposedly that's
would
the
you like
thing
to
floating around
apologize?
Twitter.
It was
I don't know if it's true or not.
I mean,
here we
I
go.
have the video in there.
Yeah.
Let's watch it. But it
Let's
looks
run
like
the
they're
video and we'll
actually going
decide. Is it
outside.
do these look like people who are leaving to go get some concessions from Madison Square Garden, Trump Arena land, or are these people who look like they're leaving because they want to leave Trump land? Go. Here's the video from the actual arena. Tony's showing it to you now. Those are people who are streaming out. There are no two ways about it. That Kim is 100% right on that, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
It looks like the main doors to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, those are
I've
the
never
main
been-
doors. That's Penn Station on the outside. Yeah,
I've
so
never
you can
been to
see
Madison
Trump
Square
speaking,
Garden, so yeah. Mhm.
and people are flowing out. That is wild. There it is,
There's a lot
Madison
of them.
Square Garden. They're
Like,
leaving.
it's not a few. It's a lot of people leaving.
It is.
So, yeah.
Now,
I don't know.
will those people be rounded up and put into re-education camps, Kim? Because
know.
those are people who still don't get it. I mean, even within the MAGA movement, there are people who don't realize you do not leave the Lord and Savior Donald Trump's rallies early. And so I think there could be a price to pay. That's all I'm trying to say.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. I'm Puerto Rican living in Philadelphia. My whole family was going to vote for Trump. But this morning, everyone in my family agreed that we all vote for Harris, Unique Metal says. Unique Metal, first of all, let me say, I give you a qualified big shout out, and I'll tell you why it's qualified. It's hard for me to believe that Unique Metal, and I want to believe this, Unique Metal, I want to believe what you said, which is that you're a Puerto Rican living in Philadelphia and your whole family was going to vote for Trump. But this morning, everyone in your family agreed that you're all going to vote for Harris. I just have trouble believing that you're a viewer and regular viewer and listener of the show, but you might be. I've just never seen your name before. And I'm wondering if this isn't somebody masquerading as a puertorriqueño. I mean, vamos a hablar en español entonces. I will decide whether you're actually a puertorriqueño, because we are going to speak in Spanish, okay? All right. So escríbeme en español. Write to me in Spanish. And we will decide. I hope Unique Metal is for real. I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but the comment of Puerto Rico, the audience went silent.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, it was that was a tough one.
It was one of those moments as a comedian, you're like, oh.
Yeah. And somebody says, Billy says,
He even, if you watch his thing, he even says like, "Oh, this one you liked." When he has all his jokes were just like, no.
Yeah. Sally C., who I think won Mark's Madness and still never received anything for it. In 1939, she says, there was a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. Right. That's what's being compared to this one. So, all I can say is, look, and even if, thank you, Sally, I mean, it's really being compared to this. If this rally actually had any kind of ripple effect, it's around the margins, you know. It's not, oh my God, he said something against Puerto Ricans. That's going to do it for him. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, so maybe it will do something. But I don't know that it'll really make a difference more than around the edge. Madison Square rally had too many ugly moments, but the operative reality is that Trump's Joe Rogan 3-hour interview has already garnered 34 million views, says Delwood Kelp, who is a right-wing crazy, Delwood Kelp, I think is. And I say that with affection. Like I'm a tree hugger, I'm a crazy tree hugger, and Delwood Kelp is a crazy right-winger. So, and we love him. He's in our family, you know. That's how you can love those who are, you know, nut jobs like Delwood Kelp. It's not his real name, so I can say that. But what I really, more to the point, want to say is that Delwood's right. You did see that Nazi coming. Says,
oh, I did not see that coming. Get it?
Oh, I did not see that coming. Saying,
yeah.
Sorry, it's tough for me to monitor everything. But I was saying something about Delwood, and now all I will say is that I think Trump helped himself with the Joe Rogan sit-down. I think Kamala should have done the Joe Rogan sit-down, although I can also see an argument against it. I'll talk about it with Gary Dietrich, perhaps, but because these are sort of interesting new independent platforms that didn't exist in the past that do reach a lot of people. And to Delwood Kelp's point, 35 million people having watched the Joe Rogan interview ain't nothing. And remember, Rogan is sort of a Trump sympathizer. He's very open to conspiracy theories. He's very open to pretty much any schlock you bring through his studio. He'll sign on to it, at least give you a chance to offer evidence unchallenged typically in that environment. And when Trump offered the conspiracies associated with his election being stolen, all Rogan said is, well, like, give me an example of that. And then Trump didn't really have anything. We'll play it for you a little bit later in the hour. Tom Gunn, a quick shout out. But the point that Delwood was making, and I think it's a decent point, is it reached a lot of people, more than the Madison Square Garden stuff, as problematic as the Madison Square Garden stuff might be. Hey, I just want to give a big shout out to my favorite gun. You know, I have only one gun that I really love. I love this gun. You're not going to get it out of my head or out of my life. It's Tom Gunn.
Big shout out.
Big shout out for a $50 super sticker. Thank you, Tom. Always generous with the show, and we appreciate so much your support. All right, on with things.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We will give you more on Joe Rogan. We'll give you more on that Madison Square Garden situation and what was said, and sort of a little bit of the blowback. AOC, of course, had a reaction as well. Remember what I said about attacking Haitians, says No Contendo. I told you it would spread. Latinos, Puerto Ricans, you are Caribbean just like me. Our fights should be united. Well, a lot of people, I think, who fall into any kind of minority category are concerned about the open nature and sort of the celebratory nature that's associated with Trump and MAGA rhetoric of, you know, bringing back the country and, you know, go home to where you came from type stuff. I mean, that's sort of a crude way to characterize it, but so you're not wrong. I mean, that's the old thing. You know, first they came for the, you know, the Jews, then they came for the Puerto Ricans, then they came, you know, and then when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up on my behalf. All right, can we now get to
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, everybody please be seated. This is an important guy coming in, so behave. This guy is our former colleague at KGO and a great voice and political analyst across the CBS television stations and across iHeart Radio. Uses him as their political guy as well. He is ours on Monday for a few minutes. How about it for Gary Dietrich, everybody? Hi, Gary.
Hey, Mark. So,
give me a damage report or a post-mortem on that Madison Square Garden event as far as Trump is concerned. Give me damage report and then political help or damage.
Well, you know, Mark, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I heard your intro here before I jumped on with you. And, you know, there's no getting around the fact that, you know, is this sort of part of Trump world, some of this craziness? Yes. Is that baked into Trump's perspective and people's perception of him? Yes. Do I think Trump and his people need to do a far better job of vetting their own intros? Absolutely yes, right? I mean, I just think some of that stuff was just completely off the wall. And yet, that's the comma, and yet, to your point, 34, I mean, I use the same phrase sometimes, 34 million views of that Rogan thing, that ain't nothing. And I think the important thing out of this election cycle that's going to be very interesting to me, you know, you go back a couple decades and you remember before online donations, people were like, wow, all of a sudden people can give online. Remember what a big deal that was? And Barack Obama, you know, all of a sudden shot up tens of millions of dollars overnight. People were like, wow, how does that? I think we may be in the same kind of tipping point when it comes to the impact of things like podcasting, right? I mean, we're going to find out after this election because there'll be a lot of postmortems. Hey, you know, what influenced your vote? And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how many people say, yeah, well, I listened to, you know, Rogan, or I listened to that. Or, you know, the Taylor Swift endorsement, that was a big deal, you know, and all the tweeting. I mean, the social media stuff, to me, may be the most singular, interesting aspect from a political science perspective out of this election cycle. How much impact did it have, or is it having, relative to the so-called traditional mainstream media And I think this is also going to spill over into another thing, Mark, and that is there'll be a lot of people in this country who have no idea who Joe Rogan is, right? They literally have no idea. But to his tens of millions of people that subscribe to him, he is a big deal, right? And I'm just wondering down the road here, how much, say, a Barack and Michelle Obama, how much of Bill Clinton is going to impact this election vis-a-vis a Joe Rogan?
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. I felt as though, and still feel, that Kamala Harris should have done Joe Rogan. I don't understand what she was afraid of. I mean, it is a weird bro-down, fraternity-like thing at Joe Rogan. You know, he does a lot of that. But, you know, Howard Stern has a lot of stuff that you might go, nah, you might be a little, certainly old school Stern is really, you know, radioactive in some ways. And sort of to what you're saying, these new platforms may represent opportunities. And I think because they're new and there might be some stink on them because of some of, you know, prior guests that have shown up, there might be reluctance to actually get into an environment like that. But wow, Gary, I mean, you know, I find Rogan to be, in essence, a pretty easy interview for most political people or, you know, even problematic figures. He's not too tough. The toughest questions he'll ask are like the sort of, I was about to say everyman questions, like just like the obvious, like, well, can you give me an example of that? Like that's an everyman question. Like it doesn't require, you know, and that's all he did with Trump. And then Trump goes for 3 hours, of course, no problem. I feel like Kamala Harris could have gotten something out of it. Although, as you keep saying, and then I'll stop talking, I guess I'm just sharing some random thoughts. It's all baked in maybe at this point, isn't it?
Well, I don't know how baked it is in total. I was referring specifically to some of those off-the-wall comments said by others at Madison Square Garden yesterday.
Sure.
They have just the other thing I think interesting about that was the timing. I'm sure they, you know, with basketball season and anything else, that probably Madison Square Garden pretty booked up. But I thought, you know, interesting that I'm sure some of this junk, Mark, got lost in the NFL yesterday. Seriously. You know, the highest rated programming forever and ever, amen, the NFL probably just overshadowed some of this stuff. There's another part about this I think that's interesting, and that is, you know, how tough is a Rogan? You make a really good point. How tough is a Rogan vis-a-vis, say, for example, Bret Baier with Kamala Harris? He was pretty tough, right? Would Rogan have been tougher on her than Baier? I hate to say, probably not, you know, probably not. Or look at the other side, you know, look at Vance yesterday on the Sunday morning shows, you know, getting beat up by CBS and ABC and some others. I mean, I'm thinking that in some ways, some of these online platforms people think are radioactive, but in some ways, they might be easier for candidates than the traditional mainstream media thinks. So I think there's going to be a real postmortem on this. And of course, for Kamala Harris, the biggest challenge is going to be if she does lose this, you know that one of the things that's going to come out, and it's been talked about through this entire cycle that she's been the nominee, was her getting on the media bandwagon late, you know, that she didn't jump on some of these exposure opportunities earlier enough. That certainly is going to be one of the critiques that's offered.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny that now that you've mentioned this, I kind of skip ahead in the movie to that as well. I think, you know, and at the time I felt, honestly, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. She was surging so much early, Gary, that I felt, and I think I've even mentioned in this exact way to you, that the people who wanted her to sit down for interviews, the people who do sit down interviews for a living, those are and that's the media. So that's what you were hearing, this chorus from the media, like she hasn't done any sit down interviews, but she was surging so effectively, so well. I mean, it was just like, why not ride the horse in the direction it's running? Now you get into the, you know, the rugby scrum of the last 10 days or, you know, less than a week or about a week. And maybe, you know, there is something to like a Joe Rogan last minute push. And I love what you said about Bret Baier. The Bret Baier thing was, I felt that was throwing a bone to the right to go in there. I mean, there's sort of like, oh, she doesn't do any tough interviews. Meanwhile, Trump was just doing rallies and, you know, these back rub interviews, essentially. The toughest things he did were, I think it was in front of the Detroit Economic Club and also the Chicago Economic Club. That wasn't tough. It was just that he made it tough because he said that stuff about tariffs. So, yeah, I think she would be surprised at how well a Joe Rogan interview would go. Hey, play Gary some of the Michelle Obama stuff, just because I wanted to at least not neglect it completely. Although I feel as though after what Gary just said, it kind of probably was lost in the wash. But Michelle Obama, you can see it there in the rundown, Tony. She was, she's so effective as a speaker. She's so very, very good. But it's a question of, when that tree falls in the forest, is it heard? Go ahead, play me a little Michelle Obama, if you would, please. Tony, Kim was very big on this, and I think she's right. I think she's right that Michelle Obama is so strong. Go ahead. This is over this past weekend. So this is, if you will, at the same time that the MAGA folk are, at Madison Square Garden, and as Gary says, there are football games going on, et cetera. Here was Michelle Obama showing up for Kamala Harris.
Who love us. Let me just try to paint a picture of what it will feel like if America, the wealthiest nation on earth, keeps revoking basic care from its women, and how it will affect every single woman in your life. Your girlfriend could be the one in legal jeopardy if she needs a pill from out of state or overseas, or if she has to travel across state lines because the local clinic closed up. Your wife or mother could be the ones at higher risk of dying from undiagnosed cervical cancer because they have no access to regular gynecological care. Your daughter could be the one too terrified to call the doctor if she's bleeding during an unexpected pregnancy. Your niece could be the one miscarrying in her bathtub after the hospital turned her away. And this will not just affect women, it will affect you and your sons. The devastating consequences of teen pregnancy won't just be borne by young girls, but also by the young men who are the fathers. They too will have their dreams of going to college, their entire futures totally upended by an unwanted pregnancy. If you and your partner are expecting a child, you will be right by her side at the checkups, terrified if her blood pressure is too high, or if there's an issue with the placenta, or if the ultrasound shows that the embryo was implanted in the wrong place, and the doctors aren't sure that they can intervene to keep the woman you love safe. If your wife is shivering and bleeding on the operating room table during a routine delivery gone bad, her pressure dropping as she loses more and more blood, or some unforeseen infection spreads and her doctors aren't sure if they can act, you will be the one praying that it's not too late. You will be the one pleading for somebody, anybody, to do something. And then there is the tragic but very real possibility that in the worst case scenario, you just might be the one holding flowers at the funeral.
Okay, so that's enough. You get a sense for it. I mean, it's pretty gruesome stuff. You can see how she's an effective spokesperson. That's a particularly uncomfortable kind of run to listen to. But that said, I'm wondering if it doesn't cut through on some level.
I think it does. Here's my thing about the Obamas. I wonder if they weren't rolled out a little late. I sort of feel like, this election, one of the things I think we're hearing now, Mark, from voters, you're even hearing it from people in the media, people are over it. You know what I mean? I just think there's a fatigue factor, so much rhetoric. This campaign has gone on so long with so many twists and turns. I kept saying, hey, when are we going to see the Obamas? When is Michelle and Barack? I just sort of feel like this last week, 10 days. I mean, if I was advising the Harris campaign, I would have brought them out a couple weeks earlier, where they are a little bit less just sort of in the midst of the final barrage of everything. You know what I mean? Because now is when you have the last House race ads, the last Senate race ads, the big closing arguments like Madison Square Garden. And I don't know, I know they were bringing them out to kind of do the close. They were to be the closers. But I just am wondering, again, on a big NFL weekend, college football weekend, I just feel like you have to be sort of sensitive to the cultural milieu. And I would have probably brought them on stage a little bit earlier to try to get some of those people over the finish line. Again, the last point I'd make on that, Mark, is, there's a quarter of the country that's already voted. A third of the country almost that's already voted. So, that's sort of my take on that. She certainly is an effective communicator, of course, as is her husband, Barack.
Our campaigns go on way too long to begin with, Gary. You know that that's true. My God, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, in Britain, you don't have this crap. You know what I mean? It's 0 to 60 pretty quickly. This is from Underdog. In the 2020 election, Joe Biden secured Pennsylvania by a margin of 81,000 votes, with a vibrant population of 600,000 Latinos and 300,000 Puerto Ricans in the state. And I'll continue the rest of this and just say, might the remarks of this past weekend have any effect on the Pennsylvania outcome?
Yeah, well, they certainly could. We don't know how that's going to resonate. I know the Trump campaign's trying to walk some of that stuff back. I certainly don't think it helped them. I mean, I think that was just those comments. I mean, to use Donald Trump's own word, it was stupid. I mean, there's just no other way to put it around. I don't know how it helps you. Let's put it that way. I mean, let's be honest about it. So, in the margins, we hear 10,000, 20,000 Puerto Ricans say, that was it. I couldn't pull the trigger for Trump on that. Could be. I mean, I don't really know. It's going to be interesting to see where a lot of these individual communities. Likewise, Mark, one we haven't touched on yet, I'll just mention briefly. Where is the Arab American community going to come down after the Israeli attack on Iran and its neighbors this weekend? I mean, there's some wild cards out there that is that going to negatively impact, Kamala Harris, who was on the Situation Room call with Biden when that attack from Israel went down. I mean, there's some niche group voters like Arab Americans, and I don't call them niche in a derogatory way. I just mean in terms of, segregated, segmented voters, voting blocks that people are paying much more attention to now. Whoever talked about, a tipping point for Arab American voters in the past? To my knowledge, nobody. And yet in this election, particularly in Michigan, they could have substantial impact. And perhaps the Puerto Rican vote or Latino vote in Pennsylvania likewise.
It's such a good point about the Arab community. I never thought about it really much before, that it hasn't been talked about in past elections as so critical in this critical swing state of Michigan. I wanted to play a little bit of the Rogan stuff, which I believe Kim has in there. Don't you, Kim? There's I wanted to play it for Gary. You'll find it, and if you can't locate it, tell me what you've got up, and we'll roll with what you've got up, Tony. Whatever's easy. We had so much set aside for you, Gary, that I wanted your take on that. I'll kind of take anything off the table, but you let me know what you've got, Tony, and I'll run with it. But this. So we've identified two things so far at minimum in this conversation. One of which is the new media environment that all of these candidates are operating in, and how maybe in the case of Kamala Harris, she's given up some of the advantages of that media environment, like for the Joe Rogan sit down, for example, because she or her people, sort of presume a negative that may not really be there in the way that she thinks. Also, the power of Trump actually doing it. It may have been more powerful than any kind of MSG rally, meeting the tens of millions of people virtually that you meet through a platform like that. Here is a little bit of Trump on Joe Rogan.
I have a theory. These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble.
You think it's bullshit? I think that's the way Trump would do it.
They sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, oh. Do you understand? I think in a lot, look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49 to 51 and 47.5?
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population. I just don't think
I don't know of one person in my whole life that ever got called by a pollster.
Exactly.
I've been called by pollsters 3 different times, so I know that it does get out there. But I also know that if Trump was a pollster, that's exactly how he would do it. He'd take the money and just make up the poll numbers, and then that would be the end of it. I mean, you can just see his mind working so obviously. So that's a bit of Trump on Joe Rogan. We have more, don't we, Tony? No? Do we? Kim? Anybody? Anybody still with me? I wanted to share with Gary. I thought that
I think we have the part where he's questioning Joe Rogan is talking and asking for examples about the presidential loss. Did he really lose? And that was kind of an interesting part. The whole Joe Rogan interview was very it was just more of a conversation, but he was allowed to lie unchecked throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about the fact that it's really not a tough environment. It wouldn't be tough for Kamala Harris either, I don't think, unless he got together with his bros who would say, ask her about this and don't let her off the hook on that. But I think in general, Rogan is fairly accommodating to his guests. I have a couple of things. Tony, if you're having trouble finding it, I can tell you where it is.
I want to talk about 2020 because you said over and over again that you were robbed in 2020.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think you were robbed? Everybody always cuts you off. I'm going to allow.
Well, they not only cut you off. Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time, and I would bring in papers that you would not believe. So many different papers. That election was so crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, let's start on the top and the easy ones.
Okay.
They were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it. In many cases, they didn't get it.
What things?
Anything.
Legislative approval
for extensions of the voting, for voting earlier, for this,
Right.
all different things. By law, they had to get legislative approvals. You don't have to go any further than that. If you take a look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted that the election was rigged, robbed, and stolen. They wouldn't give access in certain areas to the ballots because the ballots weren't signed. They weren't originals. We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present this ever? Do you think
let me just give you one more
go ahead.
before. 51 intelligence agents come up that the laptop was from Russia. It turned out to be totally false.
51 former intelligence agents, right?
They say that made, I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't have to. I lost by I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe, they say I lost by 22,000 votes. That's like 1/10 of 1%, less than that. It's a tiny little thing. 22,000 votes spread over, that's spread over this period. So 51 intelligence agents lied. They lied. They lied. They knew it was. It was Hunter's. It was from his bed. It was Hunter's laptop. They said it was created by Russia. Russia. It was the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax was a big hoax. It was all a big hoax. So
well, that's clear.
They get Mueller.
That's one example. But that is a good
example.
example.
That's a big example. They say it made a 17-point difference. That's a big example. But that's only one. And you could go into the ballots where they wouldn't give you access to the ballots. You could go into the ballot harvesting. You could go into $500 million for the lock boxes.
But just in terms of narrative, so there's two things, right? There's the Russia hoax. There's the collusion with Russia that was never proven, right? That's one.
Well, no, it was proven it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. But they talked about it on television.
But it took 2.5 years to prove.
But not only that, but it was a constant narrative on television. So
Sure.
that's a constant narrative that gets into people's minds, especially low information people that just watch the news, that you're in collusion with Russia. So that's one.
Sure.
So that changes the narrative. And then you have the 51 former intelligence agents that work with the original Twitter and get them to remove links. You can't share it on DMs. You cannot share that story. They swept that story because they said it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew it was not.
100%.
So that's two examples that are real examples. Now, anyone who considers himself a legitimate, objective observer of American politics, if you really want the best person to win, you would want people to not lie. And the only reason why they got away with this lie was because they continually labeled you as this horrible threat to democracy and Hitler. They kept saying you're going to be a dictator, ignoring the fact that you weren't a dictator for the 4 years where you were actually the president.
I was actually the opposite of a dictator. I was a very straight guy. But look, those three things, you take those three things, each one of them by themselves causes the result to be different. Okay?
It does.
And then you can go into 100 other things. There's so many.
Okay, thank you. It goes on. You see, first of all, how honestly, there's something weirdly transfixing about watching Trump just spin like this. He just spins these completely invented facts. Then you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, but that's kind of tied to a fact. I think I know what he's saying. For example, they wouldn't give us access to the ballots. That was when it was really a rebel group under the MAGA flag wanted to go in, and they did get access to those voting machines. They actually, it was quite the incident. You can Google it and read about it, those of you watching. The not matching signatures and everything, these are all Republican things, throwing people off the generally disenfranchisement of voters is the kind of thing that was happening in North Carolina and Georgia, et cetera. So, Gary, as you watch that riff, you can see how Rogan, though, because he is very conspiracy theory friendly, he wants to sort of ride to the rescue of Trump. He's helping Trump along in that exchange, I thought. Didn't you feel that?
Well, I thought it was kind of a mixed bag. When he got into saying, I agree with you about this, I agree with you about that.
Yeah,
early on, the follow-up questions I thought were pretty good, So give me an example. Tell me, okay, fine. But tell me, are you going to bring this information out? So I thought he did pretty well early in the first half of that. In the second half of it, maybe agreed with it more. Mark, here's my thing about all of that. And this is the thing that I think is going to be really interesting. Again, when all the exit interviews are done, why did you cast your ballot? When I listen to Trump recite that, and frankly, when I listen to the other side go back 4 years and recite that, I just really have large wonderings, let me just say that, about how much that really moves the needle. I think this has been said so many times in so many different ways, in so many platforms. I think the hardcore Republicans, they're going to agree with Trump. The people that are anti-Trumpers, they think that's just a whole bunch of lies. The 15% that are going to decide this election, I think their eyes glaze over with most of this. I really do. And it was interesting to me in the last week to hear Trump say, I may go ahead and, if I win, I may go ahead and just pardon Hunter Biden anyway. What? I mean, the Hunter Biden left. I only say what? I only say what because, wait a minute, bro. The Hunter Biden laptop has been one of your big things for years. And you might just pardon him. But see, to me, that is what you see in traditional politics, right? It's like, oh, well, that was then, this is now. And I think that is very much an American political mindset. Turn the page. We're going to be it's going to be a new day. I really have serious doubts, Mark, how much recitations about 2020 are still informing voters' decisions. I don't see it in the polls. I don't see it in the focus groups. I mean, are they concerned generally about the state of our democracy? Yeah, but you have those concerns when you look at the polls and the focus groups. They're with both sides. So I really don't know how much all of this, is it important? Yes. Is it moving voters' decision-making process? I just don't see a lot of evidence for that.
Interesting. You're right. The polls show that people are over 2020 and that whole stolen election thing. I thought maybe you're right to break it up into two categories. The category of helping Trump didn't come until the latter part of what we just saw. The first part, where he said, well, can you give me an example of that? Well, are you going to present this at any point? And Trump was like, well, there are hundreds of examples, et cetera. It was... But I think in the end, Rogan is in Trump's corner, of course. Primarily, I think, informed by the anti-vax thing, when the anti-vax movement got associated with Trump somehow, and MAGAs. There are a lot of anti-vaxxers in that world, which is weird, too, because, Trump began the vax development. So it's just an odd thing. But so, Gary, with just, I think we'll have one more visit before Election Day with you. Anything to watch for? Is there anything that can change much at this 11th hour? What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I'm going to touch on two important things we haven't touched on yet, and I can do it real quick because we've talked about them in the past. Senate races, House races, okay? So all the stuff happening here at the top of the ticket, people ought to remember, that stuff affects the down ticket. I mean, it affects it in terms of turnout. I mean, if you can generate 10,000 more people to turn out for the top of the ticket, you can guarantee that in most of these House and Senate races, you're going to get half of those people at least say, okay, well, yeah, I think I'll vote for the Republican or the Democrat or in this too. That can have a big effect. I mean, right now, not only is the presidential race absolutely razor-thin margin, but, tightening margins in states people didn't even expect, like Texas, like Nebraska, where Republicans have some risk at losing those 2 seats, And in the House, it's almost evenly divided, Mark, in terms of how many House seats Democrats want to flip, how many House seats Republicans think they have a good chance of flipping. I mean, this isn't just about the presidency. Whoever wins the White House, if they lose one of those 2 houses, it's going to make their life a whole lot harder in terms of doing or getting anything done. And conversely, if one of the people, one of the parties that is able to salvage one of those 2 houses and doesn't win the White House, they are going to have a major lever of power at their disposal to put huge brakes on whatever agenda the first 100 days that opposing candidate in the White House thinks they're going to, put forward.
Wow. And you're being asked, of course, I don't think you have the answer to this, but Phineas says, did Gary Dietrich offer his prediction for the presidential race?
I never shy away from doing so when it makes sense to do so. Right now, seriously, Mark, I had a lady last week grab my arm while I was going out of a donut shop. Okay, tell me, Gary, who's going to win? I didn't know her from Jane, right? I didn't know her from Jane. And then I kind of demurred, well, it's hard to, oh, come on, don't be PC. Tell me who's going to win. Listen, it has nothing to do with being.
Yeah, we lost him. This is great. It would have been great.
How convenient.
I know if he had just come on and said, I normally don't do it, but I did want to tell that lady when I was walking out of their donut shop, but I'm going to tell your audience now, and then boom, he falls out. It's great. There was an old movie. It was a comedy. It's called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And there were a bunch of these moments where they say, and the money is big. They're all looking for this money, okay? And it's all this cross-country, as I recall, sort of effort to win the money or get the money, to find the money. And the money is hiding in and then, somebody croaks right at that moment. That's what it felt like with Gary Dietrich. A lot of good info before we got to that. But we'll visit with Gary next week and know more. That was really, really cool. But I do want to tell you, Gary's segment is generously brought to us by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional. Bill Campbell is that real estate professional. Reach him at Remax Gold. Again, Bill Campbell. You can text him at 530-448-7474. 530-448-7474. He's the reason that we can see Gary Dietrich every week. So appreciate you, Bill Campbell, and Remax Gold. Thank you for that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I do have another great mind. There it is. It's a mad, 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 mad world. I just feel like there's a bunch of these moments where they're, just like that Gary Dietrich moment where he drops out right at the critical moment. But I did want to take a couple of, there's a super chat from Spencer saying, to veer everyone off the election jitters, I love the show The Penguin because it's dark, and Tulsa King because it's funny and it has Sly Stallone. I see all the, apparently The Penguin is really good and
Supposedly.
Is dark. Yeah.
That's what I've heard too.
What's that?
So I've heard the same because it's, kind of the alternate Batman stuff. And
right.
Yeah.
And the Tulsa King I've also heard good things about. I got to jump on that. Why do we have this butterfly thing? Is that what is going on with that? Did you see it, Kim? Maybe you can
I
go
did see it. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting comment, even if it is in all caps.
What, is it a comment or is it news?
It's they're trying to break news, and it is true that I did see a story this morning about a ballot box set on fire in Oregon, but I haven't confirmed the rest of it.
Well, this is what they're saying, but I don't know. I'd be very surprised if this is accurate. But breaking news, says Butterfly, people are burning ballot boxes all across America. Portland, Vancouver, Washington, Maricopa, Arizona, all ballot drop box fires under investigation in Oregon and Washington. So maybe it's true. Jeez. All Democrat areas. Do not use ballot boxes, people. Google it. Well, Butterfly D, I apologize. I mean, for even doubting you for an instant. I didn't say you were wrong.
Yeah.
But I did question the veracity of your news, and so I feel for that reason I need to quasi apologize.
CNN has video of a ballot box being, there it is, of a ballot box being, hosed down and ballots aflame there. I think that's the one in Oregon. Yeah. And how many people, I don't know if it's across the country you can sign up to find out where your ballot is in the process of being received, but how many people will be notified that the ballot they thought they dropped off okay at the ballot box has been torched.
Yeah, that is brutal. It really is brutal. I wonder, to what extent do we need, this is the craziness. Thank you, Butterfly. I didn't realize that this was happening on that level. What I was going to say is, I wonder if you could surveil all of them with CCTV. It's a little bit of a pain, but now, a lot of that stuff is done wirelessly, et cetera. It's yet one more cost. The costs of voting are borne by states, right? Because in the same way that all the states have individual voting strategies, meaning, where you can vote, there's not any uniformity state to state. Some have mail-in balloting that begins at a certain time. Others have that begins at a different time. So because there's no uniformity, there's also not a uniform amount of money that's given to the states to deal with. So a state like Texas or California obviously has to budget more for many of their elections than do other states that are smaller. The reason I mention that is, so when I'm saying they should surveil ballot boxes with CCTV, you end up with, okay, but, if that gets to be pricey, who's going to pay for that? Because there are already great stressors on the polling places and ballot process because of the MAGA world, because of the violence and because of the threatened violence. There are all kinds of additional securities and protections that cost money. So anyway, because you understand that's a federal crime, what is going on there. So if you set fire...
You're stealing people's voices.
Right, for that reason...
You don't want my voice to matter, right?
That is a federal crime. And so for that reason, maybe we'll have to protect these areas with, as I say, CCTV or something like that. I mean, it's... And from the chat, I'm pissed off at Bosa, says Karen. Could not let Purdy do his thing. This is the interview that Purdy was doing last night without breaking into Purdy's times. Looks really bad. Yeah, what happened is Brock Purdy after the Niners game was you can see
in the first half. What was?
Yeah, go ahead. And then here's Bosa ducking in. Yeah. What did he say? MAGA forever?
Trump, he says Trump, 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 and then walks away with his little Trump hat.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, it's so weak, But Not Woke says, Mark is biased. Dems do not spin. I see. Yeah, Dems spin also, but not the kind of spin and utter BS that you were getting from Donald Trump in that Rogan interview. That was, come on, dude. Really? I mean, I'm biased, but I've called out Kamala Harris. I just told you, I think she made a mistake by not doing Rogan. I also have been critical in the way she's answered certain questions. So I'm ready to take on. But would you ever criticize your Lord and Savior, Donald Trump? I don't think so. I mean, and the spin that he was offering in that Rogan interview, I mean, that was just otherworldly. And again, I watched it with a sense of wonderment, like a kid watches the Willy Wonka movie. I mean, you're just like, I just couldn't believe that Donald Trump was able to, for 3 hours, just serve up like a short order chef the kind of BS that he was brewing for Joe Rogan. And of course, Rogan is just sitting there nodding, and essentially, providing him cover for all of it. What else do you have for me, Tony, before Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, gets here.
Let's do Beyonce. Can we do Beyonce? That happened over the weekend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim has put together a nice little compendium of offerings from the weekend. Let's go Beyonce, if you can find it in there. It's in the rundown. Just give him a second. While Tony is looking, you can look for the thumbs up button. Yes, smash it
with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod like a boss. Do it because it's
with
free.
your iron rod.
And the other thing I would just mention to you at this juncture is that it helps us. Costs you nothing to subscribe, costs you nothing to hit the thumbs up, and it helps us in this weird. And isn't it now, my friends, about helping each other? If you had a thumbs up button, I would smash yours.
Smash it with your iron rod.
If you had something I could subscribe to, I would do it. If it didn't cost me anything, it's even easier. Please, if you care about us, if you want us to survive, subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and share. And now, Tony, with this is Beyonce for On the Stump this weekend for Kamala Harris.
One and only Vice President Kamala Harris. A woman who's been pushing for what this country really needs right now. Unity. It's impossible not to feel the energy in this room, the positivity, the community, the humanity. We are at the precipice of an incredible shift, the brink of history. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as a mother. A mother who cares deeply about the world my children and all of our children live in. A world where we have the freedom to control our bodies. A world where we're not divided. Our past, our present, our future merge to meet us here. Imagine our daughters growing up seeing what's possible with no ceilings, no limitations. Imagine our grandmothers. Imagine what they feel right now. Those who have lived to see this historic day. Even those who are no longer physically with us. Imagine all of their sacrifice. The sacrifices made so we can witness the strength of a woman standing in her power. Reimagining.
Okay. I think she's great. I think she's preaching a bit to the choir, but I think that's an important bit of preaching she does. And to the extent that, it's not the choir that picks up some of those messages, it's a reminder of what's happened under a Trump administration, under continued, I think, SCOTUS dominance from an active, radical, right-wing, theocratic court. So I think those are all things that are important. And if people are critical of the surrogates, so in this case, it was Beyonce, and I see it in the chat, well, she looked the other way while Jay-Z was playing around on her, or whatever it may be. Guys, I'm not voting for Beyonce, first of all, and even if I were, that wouldn't bother me. But secondly, your guy, your Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, he is rolling around with everything that moves. I mean, this guy is a notorious skirt chaser, to use the old term that could very well be applied to Donald Trump. And he's just in it for money, power, and women. That's what he's into life with. I mean, look at his track record. He's hitting on everything that moves, and he's grabbing everything that moves. And you want to tell me about Beyonce? That she was part of some party or that she looked the other way on Jay-Z? Give me a break. I'm not voting for Beyonce. I cared about what she said because she had really piercing comments that related to women and women's reproductive freedoms. Also, I think to women who want to know that there is the potential to achieve the highest levels of government, and the presidency is just that. So I like that as well. I mean, so even as women make less money, have to work harder to get into the boardrooms, and have had to exist and excel in this patriarchy that is America, and this world for that matter, and in every religion, all religions are insanely patriarchal, that you can see women still excelling, notwithstanding all of those things, is wildly exciting. And so to Beyonce's point, it's really cool to maybe see the potential that Kamala Harris reaches the Oval Office for the message it sends, in addition to all the policies that are in
It's
place.
interesting, though, when you compare the Madison Square Garden rally for Trump and the weekend rallies for Kamala Harris, how the message changes. Because the surrogates for Trump, the Hulk Hogans and the JD, they had JD Vance come out. They had a friend that he helped in high school. They had, all these people. Their message, though, was still so negative. And then you have Beyonce and you have Michelle Obama and you have Bruce Springsteen, and they come out to back Kamala Harris, and their message isn't negative. It's one of, look at what's happening right now, how we have this chance to make history, or, we have the chance to help women, get their rights back. All of these things that are the messages are more uplifting and more of hope, even not just the candidates, but down to who represents them.
Yeah. I'll give you the devil's advocate position on this, and I don't really know what's effective, but the devil's advocate position is the thing that really cuts through is negativity. The thing that really cuts through is anger and negativity. That's the reason that those anger and negativity-related clips get virality more than do the hopium of, look, we're doing so well, and we're going to do even better when you get, again, Hulk's got my vote, brother. Hello, brother. Is my MAGA mania out there? I mean, it's crazy, but the theater that Madison Square Garden stuff, if anything's going to make noise, it's that. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I see the crap from people like Not Woke, Kamala slept her way up the ladder, all of this stuff. Let me just say this. Again, I don't care. Not in America now. Let me tell you what's far more disturbing. Even if I were to accept that, okay, which is, you'd have to show me a lot more math than whether because you went out with Willie Brown or was you? Please, dude, that's not. It doesn't get it done for me. But what is to me galling and should be alarming to everyone, even though if you're GOP, I guess you feel really good about this, but it should be alarming to everyone. The oligarchy has begun, and it's Elon Musk who is the poster child for the oligarchy. He controls a massively powerful social media platform, and he does control it. That is to say, he suppresses information that is positive toward Kamala Harris, and he amplifies information that is negative toward Kamala Harris, and he does it on a very powerful platform, X, the old Twitter, right? So he's bought this thing with other people's money. He bought this thing for a ridiculously inflated price, but its value now is as a propaganda machine. So you have him doing that, and more relevant probably to Donald Trump is the fact that Musk is out there on the stump with him. He's respected because he's rich and he's used as a science guy, kind of, and also he's dumping insane amounts of money, the $100 million that Elon Musk has dumped on Trump campaign, such that you're able to get out the vote more, you're able to build a ground game, you're a lot of media buys. These are all things that are enabled by Elon Musk. So you have this wildly wealthy guy, the wealthiest guy in the world, and he's using a social media platform for a candidate. And he's also out there dumping money on that candidate, and then he's going to be part of the administration, and he already has huge government contracts. The government relationship with Elon Musk is wildly complicated and super significant and relevant. So when you add that all together, that's what you should be concerned with, not whether or not one of the candidates slept her way to the top, which is total BS anyway.
Yeah, it's a lie
Trump
anyway.
is sleeping his way to the top right now with Elon Musk. Here's how he's doing it. He's saying, hey, go down on me, Elon, like you're doing it with your money, with your media platform, and I will let you be part of my administration, and I will give you whatever government contracts you want. That's the same deal that Jeff Bezos made. I don't want you to think I'm just going after Musk. This is the stuff that should concern you, not woke. Not Kamala Harris and who she's taking her clothes off with. I don't care. And it's not true anyway. But the idea somehow that Bezos and his Washington Post, they do away with endorsing a candidate because Bezos apparently had a meeting with Trump during which time they talked about his Blue Origin company and the fact that there might be more Blue Origin contracts in the future. And it is suggested that the decision not to endorse a candidate on the part of the Washington Post might have had something to do with the fact that essentially Trump has now promised and connected with Bezos in some way for the future and for his government contracts. And the last thing I'll tell you about Jeff Bezos is that you can go ahead and cancel your Washington Post subscription. I didn't cancel mine, and I'll tell you why. It's not going to matter. It's completely performative lib theater, or like what the GOP does when they don't have French fries or whatever. Back in the days when it was that whole thing of airspace over France on the way to Iraq. The idea is simply, in the case of Bezos, he makes all his money, guys, off of huge deals through Amazon Web Services with the government. I mean, they dwarf the Washington Post. Washington Post is like walking around money to him. So you canceling your subscription only hurts brilliant reporters, Pulitzer Prize winners who are out there really doing work. The Washington Post cancellation that you may do if you're a Washington Post subscriber means nothing to Jeff Bezos, and it hurts real journalists. So I would say to you, the Jeff Bezos world is ruled by Amazon and Amazon Web Services. Has to do with stuff completely apart from the consumer service market that Bezos is part of.
So
Anyway,
this is not
that's my drill down on that.
not anywhere as important as all the things you just said about money and politics, but on a scummy level. How awful is it that people care more about the lies that Kamala Harris's relationships had anything to do with her job than they do about Trump, who made a vow and is sleeping around with Playboy playmates and porn stars? So if you want to talk about, dirty sex, then why don't you look at the other candidate for a minute?
Yeah, of course that's true. Of course that's true.
Misogynist.
Did you sent Richard Greene a he says I haven't gotten a link.
Oh, I did. I sent it last night, but I'll try again.
Yeah. Sent last night, we'll send again. All right. Now, we live out loud, my friends. We try to bring you things in the moment. Richard just said he was able to join just a few minutes, like right as we went on. That's how we're kind of doing this in the moment. Was there anything else? This is great, though, because I can get some more videos. And I'm looking to see if there's anything. No Contendo says, 45 only apologized for the grabbing comment. He knows he stepped in it. I truly hope all Latinos unite in their vote against 45. Pure hate within 45. Luis on his Dodgers. He is very much a Dodger fan.
What?
And he is very happy. Muchas gracias, compadre. I'm sure your World Series presence, along with the spirit of El Toro, played a role in the Friday Freddie miracle. Go Dodgers. And it was a remarkable couple of games that they played. I mean, this has really been a great World Series. Again, a lot of Giants fans here, so it's very hard to enjoy any Dodgers moment. But that said, really something special. And thanks, Luis, for the shout out and recognizing my little VO on the World Series.
I think Richard Greene, the science dean, is here.
He's not a science dean; he's a civics dean. But I am. I am
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy is terrific, and when it comes to a couple of things, and we'll touch on them with Richard Greene in our conversation that's about to ensue. With regard to a couple of things that seem like intractable issues, I'll give you the example of the Electoral College, and we know it to be a problem, and we know it to really be a blight on our democracy and our democratic republic. Richard Greene will remind you, as he's done before, that there are efforts underway already to change the Electoral College, and they're not it's not just talk. So we'll get to that. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit more about the election down ballot races. How about it for Richard Greene, the Civics dean, everybody?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for joining us on short notice. I know you're dining with celebrities, and you're well sought after. You have your TikTok audience that's after you all the time. You're a big deal. So Richard Greene, thank you. What is the state of the state right now, Richard Greene?
So I just have to tell you, literally, I am at the Sherman Oaks batting cage because I'm so revved up about the Dodgers and the World Series. Just to relieve some election
I thought
stress.
you were batting
right?
for Kamala or something now. This is
Oh, here,
something
look,
you're doing
there's
with your
the batting.
Tic Tac audience. Yeah.
So apparently
Well, we're
I'm
all
not
happy
a
for you, but so yeah.
Dodgers. Go Dodgers.
They're not going to call
So-
your number tonight. Yeah.
Listen, if Shohei can't play, I'm ready. So
All right,
what
what's
was
the
the
state of the
question?
state? Hot shot. What's the state of this? Come down off of cloud nine. The series ain't over yet. Now you're back in New York. I want to ask you about what's the state of the state, Richard Greene, the Civics dean. You know, and I mean that almost literally, but you have gone state to state. You also are very close to a lot of these Democratic strategists and pollsters. You have strong opinions as to how the entire thing is being prosecuted. Give me your sense of things right now with just a week out.
So, I mean, I agree with Kamala and everybody else who says, I can't believe it's even close. But it's super, super, super close. From everybody I've heard from that I've talked to, except for two people. So I have a friend, a very smart friend who's never been wrong up in Silicon Valley. He says it's going to be a blowout for Kamala. I saw somebody online who's a pollster guru who says the polls are wrong. It's going to be a blowout for Kamala and Democrats. I had a number of people who have said that it could be different, but right now I believe that it's going to be so close that the election and the future of America will be decided by who wakes up with a headache, who has a last minute emergency where their kid is sick and they have to stay home to be with the kid, or they just are too tired, or they got a job that took them out of town and they didn't have time to go vote. That is how frickin' close this is in all of the 7 swing states.
Wow. And so Mo Direct asked, what about the House and the Senate? Is there any kind of movement there that offers a predictability? I mean, can you forecast that at all?
So I spoke to somebody who is a very big deal person in Ohio who has been a member of Congress. And I said, how is it going with Sherrod Brown in Ohio? And he said, it's a coin flip. So let's just focus on that. If Sherrod Brown loses his Democratic seat in Ohio, Democrats are already going to lose the seat in West Virginia. That takes us, that alone, everything else, ceteris paribus, everything else being equal, that takes us from 51 to 49, and Mitch McConnell's replacement is the majority leader of the Senate. So we have very tough races in Nevada, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin. The only good news is that I'm hearing more and more, as you are as well, that Colin Allred could in fact flip Texas and defeat the unbelievably, historically unpopular Ted Cruz. And then now, especially with that Puerto Rican comment at the Trump Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden, who knows, maybe Rick Scott is vulnerable to Debbie Murcaso-Powell in Florida. So it was so
funny, not to interrupt, but just quickly to interrupt. It was so funny to have Rick Scott, of all people, come out against that remark. I mean, he did make public statements saying that doesn't represent the people of the MAGA movement, et cetera. So even he knew that was, that was obviously something that was a smear.
Can we just agree? Listen, you're a comedian, or I mean, how do you allow someone to go up what that comedian said? I mean, that was unbelievably vile stuff.
Yeah, the reason he was there is because he has an immense following, Tony Hinchcliffe, and I think people are increasingly ending up on the bill because they have Twitter followings or YouTube followings or TikTok followings, all of which Tony Hinchcliffe has. He's has an audience, and so it's thought if you bring enough people with big audiences, Dr. Phil, Hinchcliffe, Musk, etc. If you bring them all to the podium, that's a really popular rally. Rick Scott says this
Can
joke
I
bombed
remind-
for a reason. It's not funny and it's not true. Puerto Ricans are amazing people and amazing Americans. I've been to the island many times. It's a beautiful place. This again is Rick Scott from Florida. Everyone should visit. I always do whatever I can to help any Puerto Rican in Florida, and so that was and so.
Can I remind people what real class looks like, even in the midst of a presidential campaign? Remember when John McCain had someone in his rally, and this is in 2008, who said, "I don't want to vote for Obama. He's a Muslim. He's a this." And then at that moment, he didn't waste a second. He said, no, 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 he's a fine man. He's a Christian. And, we disagree on issues. But Trump waited, till a day after the people, because they love this stuff. And you know why they love it, Mark, is because what we are descending into, and I am now no longer alone in saying this, I've been saying this for years, is Donald Trump is a fascist. What Mark Kelly said, what the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman Mark Milley said, what Kamala has now said, the fact that the owner of the Los Angeles Times, the billionaire oligarch owner of the LA Times, is afraid of what the dictator will do if he gets into power, so he doesn't have an endorsement in the LA Times. The same thing with the Washington Post. We are moving into fascism, and this rhetoric at that rally with this comedian and everybody else, and now Dr. Phil, is exactly the kind of stuff. This otherization is exactly what is the precondition for fascism. We're headed off a frickin' cliff if Donald Trump gets elected.
It is an insanely stark fact that some of what you're talking about is so clear in the decision I was talking about on the part of Bezos not to let the Washington Post come out with an endorsement. Same is true at the LA Times. And again, these guys are bellwethers because they're super rich guys who own these papers, and you wouldn't think that they would necessarily need to be scared, per se, of any repercussions from Donald Trump. But that's exactly what's happened. They are scared because Trump handles all of those contracts with Bezos and Amazon Web Services, additional involvement with Blue Origin, which is Bezos' space company. So if they want a place at the government table, and their life may depend on it, in the case of Bezos, most certainly the financial life of his company and so many of his companies depends on it, they have to play ball with this guy. And you're right. That's the rise of an authoritarian right there, with the threats of political recrimination made good if you don't play ball.
And honestly, Jimmy Kimmel has joked about it. Bill Maher has joked about it. It is real. If Donald Trump becomes president and is on his grievance retribution tour, and Jimmy Kimmel says something when he's president in the United States, Jimmy Kimmel says something bad about Donald Trump could pick up the phone and say, you're on a conference call with the head of my FCC, and we are going to pull your ABC broadcasting license. And you say, well, that can't happen in America. Well, people didn't think that kind of stuff could happen in Germany either.
I love that example for the fact that it speaks to information. And one of the things I think has really been a casualty of since the 90s, since Clinton changed ownership rules, is the Clinton administration changed ownership rules. You have no cross-section of opinion anymore across local stations, which really have a lot of weight, particularly with an older demographic that votes. Radio and television is controlled by a handful of companies. And so when you get to your situation where you go, okay, well, the chief executive is picking up the phone and he's going to threatening to pull the broadcast license, essentially, of a major television carrier. That's the extension, again, of information being snuffed out. So people in a democracy, I think, Richard, people need all that information. So they go to other places. They come here to YouTube or to podcast. Right. You begin to have to sort of chase stuff down, and then you really have a diminution, I think, of dependable information. There's just not as much dependable information out there.
So I am launching tomorrow, 1 week before the election, an ebook, a free ebook called Who to Vote For. And it is the most reliable, factual-based voter's guide in history. All I'm doing is I'm saying the Women's Health Protection Act, for example, the bill that will restore reproductive rights and codify Roe v. Wade. Here's how Democrats voted for that in the last Congress. Here's how Republicans voted for it. And going through price gouging legislation, banning assault weapons, democracy, voting rights legislation, healthcare, everything. So the biggest myth that keeps people from having confidence in our system is the myth that both parties are the same and therefore my vote does not count. And the truth is your vote counts a lot, like a lot, even in these down ballot races. And this is the greatest and simplest time in the history of American politics, to vote. You know why I say that? Because when you and I were younger, Mark, there were liberal Republicans and there were conservative Democrats, and you couldn't just say, oh, vote for Democrats, vote for Republicans, because there was a huge variation within each party. Now, everything has very much gone from one end to the other, and you have an entire party with very few exceptions that supports reproductive rights, that supports climate action, that supports, gun safety, that supports certain things, and you have the other party who opposes everything. And you would say, well, that's horrible. We're so fractured. We're so partisan. No, it's super simple. If you want to restore women's reproductive rights and codify Roe v. Wade, vote for Democrats. And on so many other issues, if you want a national abortion ban, or you just don't want to codify Roe v. Wade and you want to leave it up to the states, and we've seen what happens in places like Texas and other states, right? Then vote for Republicans and shut up. Just vote. But people don't know that there is such a clear black and white, up and down difference. And I'm an American. I believe in democracy. Here's your democratic choice. We can do this, we can do that. And people say, oh, we need a third party. We don't need a third party. The Democrats actually represent virtually everything that the vast supermajority of Americans want. And if you don't understand that, it's because you're not getting the right information.
For some
Mark,
reason,
you're muted.
I think you're muted.
There we go. I'm back now.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, there we go. Got it.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, the idea that there isn't a starkness to this election, it's just so close. Gosh, it's just so fuzzy. I don't know. They're so close on these issues. Really? I don't think so. And this schism is massive. And it's so interesting, too, that there's even a split in what you're describing at the beginning of this conversation with the people that you spoke with who are forecasting sort of top-of-ticket outcome. It's that close that we really just don't know. And it's remarkable to me that you have a guy who engineered a coup against the U.S., and somehow he's even in the hunt. I'm leaving out everything else, okay? It's just remarkable to me.
But here's the thing. So what I hear from so many people is, well, I'm voting for Trump because I got a stimulus check from Trump. Or I'm voting for Trump because I had more money in my bank account. Or I'm voting for Trump because egg and bacon prices, and you and I have solved that problem in a whole different way, right? Because we don't eat bacon. Sure. I sometimes eat eggs. I know you don't. They're much higher now. And damn it, Biden, it's the worst economy in the world. I had an argument with my own neighbor about that. It's not the worst. We're the envy of the world. We have the lowest inflation. We have the lowest price. We have the best unemployment numbers, on and on and on. But ultimately, the problem is, and this is where fascism gets to breed, is that people do not have credible, reliable information about what is actually going on. And we've gone in, and like the people who have made that comedian who is dissing Puerto Rico so famous online, you're in your bubble and you refuse to go out of it. So we need factual information, and that's why your show is so important.
Well, thanks. I mean, I think there are a bunch of shows and a bunch of places to get some good information, and I just hope that it's getting to the right places, because I think there's a lot of noise out there. It's very hard to cut through. I wanted to, in our last minute or so with you, I'm so grateful for your pop-in visits. I have recalled that I think in the last couple of visits we've touched on the Electoral College, and obviously it's a blight on the political system when it comes to choosing a president in this country. But you made the point, I wonder again if you could just repeat it, please, because again, it comes up a lot, that the Electoral College is not something that we just have to live with. Sure, we have to live with it this election cycle, but there's already an effort. It's a viable effort underway to get rid of the Electoral College. Run through it quickly, if you would, please, Richard Greene.
Yeah, well, The Daily Show last week did 2 days on this, which was fantastic. First of all, I have to say, to answer your previous question, Democrats are 4 House seats away, 4 House seats away from taking back the majority and being able to be, at the very least, a check and balance on Donald Trump if he does win. 4. We can elect way more than those 4 in California alone, or certainly California and New York. So if you're not planning to vote because your vote doesn't count because of the stupid Electoral College for president, go and make sure to vote for the Democratic congressman, because it could be the difference of one congressman out of 435, whether we restore reproductive rights or we have an abortion ban. On the Electoral College, there is something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It started in 2006. It is a state-by-state series of bills, same bill, that will guarantee that the Electoral College is changed as we know it, because everyone who signs this bill, and California's passed it, New York's passed it, all the obvious blue states have passed it, 17 states plus DC, for a total of 209 Electoral College votes, have guaranteed that they will give all of their Electoral College votes to not the winner of their own state in an election, but the winner of the national popular vote. Here's the awesome news. If you have friends in the very important swing states of Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, and Nevada, their state legislators are very, very close to passing this bill in each of those 4 states. They just need a few more Democrats in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, and Nevada to be able to get over the hump to pass the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, just a few in each of those states. And then we're at 260. And then Virginia, if we get a Democratic governor in Virginia, and they've already passed that bill in their legislature, we're now at 273. And the presidential election of 2028, if we do this, will be decided by the national popular vote. So that your vote, Mark Thompson, my vote in California will count just as much as everybody in Michigan and Nevada and North Carolina and all of that. So make sure that people vote, not just for president, but also for Democratic state legislators, because virtually every Democratic state legislator wants the national popular vote. They want every vote to count. Virtually every Republican state legislator in every state in the country wants what Donald Trump wants, which is to be able to game the system and to get back into power as president because of this antiquated, racist, anti-democratic Electoral College.
Kim.
Why would, Dean Greene, swing states give up that power?
Well, a lot of swing states already have, or quasi-swing states. They would do it because they're Americans and they're sick and tired of 4,000 television ads for the last 2 months of every election cycle. And they honestly believe in democracy and that every vote should count. And if they're going to be selfish and they're going to try to extract favors and building projects and whatever, then I call that corruption.
There it is. A lot of people are asking what possibly would motivate red state legislatures to overturn anything that plays to their favor right now.
The truth, here's another answer. And the other answer is, and Michael Steele, the former head of the Republican Party, is very involved in this. And one of the reasons he's in favor of this is he said, Texas is not going to be a reliably red state, for example, nor is any state. You can't guarantee the demographics. So why not make it be fair for everybody? Because you might be on the other side of that equation one day.
By the way, the last part of this question from Uncle Jim is, would SCOTUS find this constitutional? I'm assuming that the compact is successful.
Yeah, well, here's the good news and the bad news. So the good news is every lawyer working with the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact says that it is absolutely positively constitutional. Why? Because the Constitution gives full discretion and authority to every one of the 50 states to decide how to distribute their electoral college votes. And we already know that. In Maine and Nebraska, for example, they do it in a different way than a winner-take-all system in the other 48. That said, the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court, and as we have seen on immunity and Roe v. Wade, they can do whatever the hell they want. But there is a fix to that, Mark Thompson. I never come with a problem without a fix. And the fix is, if we elect 4 more Democrats to the House, 1 more net Democrat to the Senate, and Kamala Harris, the United States government will pass a bill to reform the Supreme Court in one way, either through term limits or a rotating basis, so that we are not stuck with this Supreme Court for the next 20, 30 years.
Wow. Wow. All right. I'm looking at I think my time with you is up. I love that you cruise through our world, and I'm looking forward to another visit. I have to tell you, we're looking at a possibility here of joining live with our show, especially on, I got to do KFI on Tuesday night, but then coming over and doing from the studio a special election show just for an hour or so at 8 o'clock, from the 8 to 9 o'clock hour Pacific time. Are you around to even pop in for 10 minutes or 5 minutes for that night?
I think it will be therapeutic for me.
Okay, so I would love to have your take on it. We'll watch some of the real-time returns. Tony's going to hook up this thing, so we've got all the different networks, and you can watch it all, and watch it with us. It'll be like a watch party for an hour. Real quick,
if people want my book, happy to send it to them. You can post my email. Richard,
yeah, there it is. Who to vote? Here it is. Richard, who to vote for? Go ahead. What
Richard,
is your email?
Richard at wordsthatshooktheworld.com. Just send it to me and I'll send you the book. And then I'm
Richard at words that shift the world?
Shook the world. Words
shook
that
the world. Okay.
Like yours, Mark.
Tony's got it. Tony's got it down. Tony's entering it now.
At Civics Dean on TikTok. I'm going to be posting all my stuff.
Yeah, we've been posting your TikTok handle throughout this conversation. Okay. So there it is. Look at it. Richard at wordsthatshooktheworld.com. God,
great to see you, Mark.
It's great to see you. You and all your domain names. I love it. Let's see you on Tuesday night. You'll join us, and we'll have some fun. And while we watch, hopefully, a defeat, and Donald Trump will be out of our lives, at least temporarily.
We are at the deciding point between utopia and dystopia, but it's fixable if people vote.
Richard at wordsthatshooktheworld.com. Pick up his ebook. Thank you, Richard Greene. Love you. See you again. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Really something. That guy knows his stuff. And I encourage everyone to be a part of Richard Greene's world. So, Mark, just make a loop saying it'll be okay on election night, and let's and let the chat freak out. It is likely that we'll do an election night show. Kim, I think, sort of suggested, and look, we don't have to do beyond for more than an hour, just a way in which we can all crash land on election night. And once Tony said he can do it, and Kim says she can do it, and then you get a Richard Greene, and you get a Spencer Christian probably will come through. Some people who maybe I'll get Mankiewicz or someone like that. And we'll try to tap some of our regulars to be on as well. But because it's election night, everybody's doing their own show. So the election night Mark Thompson show should be 4 hours. Kim can start the show at 7, and you can take over when you show up. Says Trevor. Yeah. Well, we could do that too. I mean, you don't need me.
No, no, we need you.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to drop in. I'm just wanting to see if there's anything else here I need to get to before I How much time is left in the show, Tony?
About 7 minutes.
Jeez, that's just crazy. What's happening?
You have a lot of people to thank as well.
Mark's vote should count for 10 people, Justin says. All right. I'll take
Why?
that. I don't know why, but I love it.
Did you see this one yet from Luis?
Yes, I read it on the air. I really did. Maybe you stepped out for that part of the show, but I
No,
already read it.
I thought
Mark,
it was the second one.
Oh, was there two of them?
I don't know.
Hang on. There's a sec. Hang on. 45 not only apologized for the grabbing comment. He knows he stepped in it. I truly hope all Latinos unite their vote against 45. Pure hate within 45. Yeah, I read that already. Okay. No contendo, but now we read it again. Here is Luis. I love how Trump hangs out with racists, has lunch with racists, has racist comedians at his rallies. Then his spin people claim he had no idea.
What? He had no idea they were racist.
That's a great take, Luis.
That's
God,
really
that's really
funny.
cool. Thank you for that super chat. Harris did a Fox News interview. Did Trump do an MSNBC interview? No.
No.
Of course not. I mean, there's a total double standard.
Mm-hmm.
Osborne from the great country of Norway writes, when Donald gets to be dictator, he will call in the oligarchs and have them sign over their wealth. They are fools to support him. By the way, were it really a dictatorship of that sort, I think what you're going to get is a soft dictatorship initially, a kind of soft power when it comes to these big, the oligarchical handful that might have tremendous influence in government. But what Osborne is saying, and I know I'm saying his name wrong, but something like that, Osborne, I think he's not wrong that in a traditional arrangement where you have a rising dictator, the idea that you would somehow take their money or get a piece of their business, it's pretty well established.
Communism?
Right. So this is why the communist Marxist labels do not apply to a Kamala Harris or to any kind of
all the money
Democrat.
goes to the state, right? It goes to
exactly.
Yeah.
You'd have state ownership of everything. So all of you MAGA morons who are on here with this stuff, and again, you can vote for
Comrade Kamala. Yeah.
And just
sure.
just because you're a MAGA doesn't make you a moron. But I'm saying that. But I am. There's a subset of MAGA, just like maybe you call us crazy libs over on the left. But I would say if you really are calling those names, the communist Marxist names, and directing them toward the Democrats, that's moronic because of what we were just saying. Real Marxism, real communism starts with, is foundationally about government owning the means of production. It's one of the earliest things stipulated in the Communist Manifesto or any other writings or even experiential evidence that you can find from communist Marxist regimes. That's what happens because the thinking is that the government is the people and the people should own the means of production. That is the Marxist communist way. So when you call her a communist, you're saying she believes that the government, the people, should take over the means of production. Oil companies, municipal power production, energy companies of all types, communication companies. The government owns all of them. Okay? That's true dictatorship, and it's true communism and fascism. It's what you will find in China, and you'll find it in North Korea. You'll find it in Russia. This is the governmental setup, if you want to look at it this way, the leadership that Donald Trump envies. He said he envies it. Then you get to a Viktor Orban. Orban is in Hungary. That is a soft dictatorship. You don't quite have the sort of, it's not like China, all right, with control over the people. But you have the... Sorry?
He said he likes China. He likes Xi Jinping ruling with an iron fist. He said, this guy's great. Look at what he does. 1.4 billion people, he says, whatever. And they're all ruled with an iron fist. And he loves that Xi got laws changed so that he could be president for life. This
Right.
is what he said to Joe Rogan.
Right,
Wow.
right. Anyway, I mean, and that makes life a lot easier if you're the leader.
I guess.
But if you look at Hungary, they went after and they jailed political enemies. They also the opposition leadership, even those who were involved in communications. That is to say, if you want to think of them as the on-air people, like the Lester Holtz of the world, they even jailed some of them. So in Hungary, you see it. Orban is taking. They went through the universities. They got rid of a lot of university programs that they felt were not friendly toward the new Hungarian regime. So all of that is going on under Viktor Orban. Erdogan is another one in Turkey. So you see a rising new class of dictatorship worldwide, and Trump would like to be part of it. And apparently there's an appetite in America for Trump to be part of it.
Crazy.
In our Tuesday watch party, John Rothman will join everyone. So, I'm a law and order lib. I'm a tree hugger, but I believe in law and order in a strong way. So I do think you can have a mix of all sorts of policies. I think Kamala Harris, to be honest, is a pretty mainstream Democrat. I don't see her as having a radical bone in her body. Look, she's on a stage with Liz Cheney. I mean, are you kidding me? What more evidence do you need that this woman is, this person is trying to attack toward the center to try to mirror the kind of, it would seem, general attitudes that the population has or that the electorate has toward politics. They're kind of center left is the country we live in. But man, I'm here in Nevada right now, and I'm leaving right after the show is over, but they are absolutely carpet bombing the air with these Trump ads. I was watching football yesterday, and they hit hard, and you know what they're hitting on? Trans issues. It's like big, and all of the down ticket stuff is all trans issues, but they're advertising Trump, so it's all Trump. Like if you like Donald Trump, you'll like fill in the blank, and I'm telling you, if you just watched ads, you'd think that we're a country with all these trans people everywhere. And we have a bunch of people in prison who are trans who want to get the operation and the surgery that Kamala Harris is paying for. That's all I saw yesterday on television as I watched football. Okay? So when the reality is no one in prison is transitioning and no one is having their transition paid for by the government. It's just not happening. But it's showing up in so many of these ads that you definitely would think that is the case. Hey, before we leave, super sticker, thank you for Wes. Appreciate you always, Wes. You're really, really cool. And I give you a big shout out.
Big shout out.
I have my little big shout out machine with me today. Eric Smith, thank you.
Big
also,
shout out.
big shout out for a super sticker. Eric, what is the secret between Trump and Moses Mike? Yeah, you're talking about Mike. You're talking about the House Speaker. That's who you're speaking of?
Moses Mike.
He's a holy roller, Mike Johnson. I don't know what the secret is, but Johnson is amazing at how he spins for Trump. I mean, I think Johnson's agenda is theocratic. I think he wants a Christian nation, and he wants he's a hard right, alt-right guy. Also, right up front, election denying. He was doing it early. He was, first to that parade. So he is not in question when it comes to loyalty. Trump will replace the Macy's Day Parade with a North Korea-inspired tank parade. Well, I love a parade, and so, could be fun. He loves those tanks, and he loves the military parading by. You remember, Trump loved doing that. He wanted, how soon can I get my parade? And he did. He had it. 45 isn't helping anyone down ballot. He's sabotaging. Maybe, No Contendo, you may be right about that. No Contendo in the super chat makes a point, which is, not everybody in MAGA land is nuts. They want just a little pinch of MAGA in their political stew. And there might be a little bit too much MAGA in their political stew for some of them. Sally C. In 1939, there was a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. Sally C. We read that at the beginning of the show, and she was so lovely, Sally C., to still watch and comment, given the fact that she won March Madness and she was never awarded her prize, which is outrageous, and I blame
you.
I blame Albert on that.
Albert, thank
but
you.
I also maybe I am to blame too. So sorry about that. No Contendo watermelon comment versus Mike Johnson's adopted son. Oh, is that what? I didn't see it. You'll have to give me something on that, Kim. I don't know what he's talking about.
So the horrifyingly racist comedian said something about black people carving watermelons for Halloween instead of pumpkins, which was, I mean, hard for me to even repeat it, but that's what he was said. But I'm not sure about the adopted son comment.
Well, Johnson has an adopted son. He adopted him, I think, when he was 13, who is black. Maybe that's it.
So how could he come after that and
right.
stand there in support of it? Right.
Yeah,
Outrageous.
I mean, how could Ted Cruz support Donald Trump when he went on about the fact that Ted Cruz's wife is so ugly? I mean, he really said that. I mean, how could you? I mean, and then you're working the phones. I mean, talk about a guy who's just dominated by Trump.
Yeah.
So I think they're all the worst kind of politician, one who will do anything, and they'll all kiss Trump's ass because they're scared of his power and they want more power of their own. Why did Lindsey Graham sign on with Trump? He didn't just sign on with him. He was his best surrogate in every controversy. Lindsey Graham going on Fox News. He went on that Hannity show, or one of those shows. I think it was Hannity. And he was in tears. Did you see him? He was choking up. This is at the beginning of the trial process for Trump. Pitching for money, how you should send money in so that Trump has enough money to defend himself. He was choking up. It's crazy. Why? Because he wants to be close to power. It's all about power. So,
can I mention something? Because you brought up Liz Cheney, and I just wanted to, something really surprised me over the weekend. And it's this quote. Liz Cheney was on State of the Union on Sunday, and she said this: "You have pro-life women all across this country who have been watching what's happening in places like Texas, North Carolina, where since Roe was overturned, you had laws put into place at the state level that are preventing women from getting life-saving care." She said, "You have women like me who have been pro-life saying what we have seen happen cannot stand." Wow. Liz Cheney, this pro-life politician, is coming out and saying, wow, what we were seeing, it's not just about abortion, it's about women's health, it's about women dying. This can't stand. So I am hopeful, as you talk about, Trump commercials on during football, I'm hopeful that more women, even women that, would not have an abortion themselves, would look at what's happening and would come out in favor of women's health overall.
That's a great run there. And it honestly points up for me the power in having a Liz Cheney around. As you know, I wasn't crazy for these right-wingers who were coming on. They would say, how come George Bush doesn't come on? And, along with Dick Cheney came. I don't want George Bush and Dick Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris if I'm a Kamala Harris person. George Bush is responsible for the Iraq War. He's a witless, feckless moron who never belonged in the White House. Dick Cheney called all those shots, and they were awful shots, and that's why I didn't want her dad, Dick Cheney, around. But boy, when you read me something like that from Liz Cheney, that speaks to how maybe she's on the wrong side of a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things. We would disagree about women's reproductive freedoms and where they should be, and she owns that. But then she speaks to this moment in this country. So really
We played part of the Michelle Obama speech earlier and didn't get to the part that I thought was overwhelmingly powerful, where she also talks about how the changes in women's reproductive health really don't just affect abortion care or reproductive care. It affects care overall, as far as doctors now not feeling comfortable with women's health care, leaving for other states. So now you have women that don't have access to health care. You might have a grandmother who, has some type of ovarian or cervical cancer who gets a late, more than would be normal, late diagnosis because she doesn't have access to a clinic or access to medical care that she needs. And how this is now spreading from beyond what you think is, the 25-year-old young woman who made a mistake. No. Now they're talking about women's health care overall, especially women in these states that can't get access to it, and how it has a wider reaching impact than we knew.
Oh, so well put. See, you can do a show by yourself. I think that I'm looking forward to that. I tell you, we're getting thrown out of here, so I have to wrap this up.
Okay.
Tomorrow we're back in our studio. Tomorrow we have all of these major issues with this major election afoot. The great David K. Johnston joins us tomorrow. Do we have another guest tomorrow? I've lost track.
Jeffrey Graham.
I think, is he on tomorrow, or is he going to be? He might be on the road.
Double check.
Okay. But we definitely have David K. Johnston. I'm looking forward to that. Also, I will play you a bit more of the Rogan stuff and some stuff from this past weekend. Of course, there's stuff going on today. And it is legal to get an abortion in China. They are better than us. Think about that, says Mindy. Wow. Well, Shadow, please, if you would.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
I'm taking my Kamala Harris finger puppet, which I brought with me.
Bye-bye.
And I'm going to the after party live. Thanks, everybody. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.